Commissioner Grisby, Commissioner Guardino, Vice Chair Gardini, Commissioner Inman, Commissioner Liu, Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Norton,
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni, Chair Eager. Give us a test, please, Matthew.
Yes, I can, Douglas.
We're good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Eager, and good morning, Commissioners. Tab 25 is an information item containing the Senate Bill 1 semi-annual progress report for the period from July 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. I would now like to introduce Angel Pyle, the Caltrans SB1 Program Manager, who will be presenting this item.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Executive Director Weiss, and also Chief Deputy Keever. My name is Angel Pyle, and I have the privilege of being the Senate Bill 1 Program Manager for the department. First, let me say it's a pleasure to be with you here in person today, and I appreciate everyone being here today. I'm here today to present the SB1 semi-annual report. So I'll just wait a moment for the PowerPoint to come up. Awesome, thank you.
Next slide, and they'll change it.
Brilliant, thank you. Next slide, please.
Angel, if you could get a little closer to the mic, they're having trouble hearing you on the webinar.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So today I'm going to my annual report. I'm going to provide an update on the Rebuilding California website, and I'm going to dedicate most of my time to some SB1 project highlights, which I'm very excited to present to you here today. Next slide, please. As a friendly reminder for everyone, the SB1 semi-annual report covers the programs that are on the screen. This covers the Solutions for Congested Corridor program, the Trade Corridor Enhancement program, the Local Partnership program, both formulaic and competitive elements, the Active Transportation program, and the SHOP. Next slide, please. So here with this slide, you can see a very high-level summary of the program. I just want to highlight a couple of things on here. We have over $7.4 billion of programmed SB1s represented by these programs. These represent 1,800 allocations that have been authorized by this commission, and for a total of $3 billion worth of awards completed or currently in the works. As a reminder, these projects deliver a multitude of benefits for all Californians, including enhanced goods movement, decreased delays, improving options for transit, which are achieved. Wow, I feel louder now. Okay. All right, very good. So these benefits include enhanced goods movement, decreased delays, improving options for transit, which are achieved through the development of HOV, HOT lanes, grade separations, transit vehicle acquisitions and service improvements, bike lanes, improved crosswalks, and more. So for a complete list of these benefits, please feel free to take a look at the report online, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. For the SHOP, SB1 is a significant source of funding, and I'm happy to report 161 projects have completed construction. Accomplishments from these projects will be represented in the performance benchmark report, which will be presented to the Commission in June of this year. Next slide, please. As a reminder to everyone, the external-facing SB1 website is rebuildingca.ca.gov. We've recently overhauled this website, and we're improving the existing content as well as adding new information all the time. I would like to encourage folks to come back to this website to check out new content periodically, and we're excited about the changes that are coming up. Next slide, please. The SB1 investments provide significant benefits to Californians, and I'm very excited to share 3 project highlights with you today, and I'm looking forward to sharing even more project highlights in the future. All right, next slide, please. Many of you may have seen the announcement earlier this year, but we have the delivery of new electric buses that are in the Santa Barbara area. The Santa Barbara County Association of Governments was awarded and allocated $5.3 million from SB1 as a part of the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. This project purchases 5 battery-powered electric coach buses and the supporting charging infrastructure. The buses have a range of 220 miles and 4 additional daily round trips to existing service. The expansion of service offers commuters and travelers more options for direct connections from their homes to their places of work. The additional buses will reduce travel time along the US 101 corridor by 45 minutes and also reduce 1.5 million personal vehicle miles per year. Could we go to the next slide, please? So these next 2 highlights are video highlights. So the 2 videos together are a little bit over 8 minutes. I'm very excited to talk about these here today. So we have 2 projects. We have the Redlands Passenger Rail Project, which was partially funded by the Solutions for Congested Corridor Program, the LPP program, and also the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. The Sacramento I-5 Enhancement Project was also provided a significant amount of funding from the Solutions for Congested Corridor Program. Before we go to the videos, I'd like to thank our District 3, District 8, and also our headquarters public affairs staff. I also want to extend a special thank you to the commission and to Justin with the commission, as he has narrated one of these videos for us. So really want to give a shout out to him and say thank you for doing that. So with that, I will step aside for a moment. Yeah. So I will step aside and allow the videos to come up, and then I'll come up and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
The Redlands Passenger Rail Project is an innovative 9-mile regional rail project that provides additional transportation choices through the introduction of a new rail service known as Aero, which integrates conveniently with other modes of transportation such as auto, bus, and bicycle. Developed by the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority and ultimately operated by Metrolink, Aero will connect San Bernardino to Redlands and offer residents, businesses, and visitors a new commuting option to travel to a variety of job centers, recreation, education, healthcare, and other destinations. Funding this $360 million project includes $165 million in state and SB1 funds, including funds from the Solution of Congested Corridors Program, the Local Partnership Program, and the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program.
Funding, is a very complex challenge when it comes to transportation delivery, and it usually is a combination of federal, state, and local resources coming together to put together a funding package for major projects to help people move to and through our county. For the Redlands Passenger Rail Project, the state is a major contributor to that funding package, and SB1 is a significant portion of that overall funding effort. We value that the state sees value in making investments like that into projects like the Redlands Passenger Rail Project, because those are the kind of projects that make a difference in the quality of lives for the people in our county. The transportation project like the Redlands Passenger Rail Project, or what we call in the future Aero service in San Bernardino County, is connecting a portion of our county that really hasn't been connected before to the major transportation network that not only serves San Bernardino County, but really serves Southern California as a whole. This East Valley portion of our county, as well as a portion of Riverside County, is probably one of the fastest growing regions in Southern California. And so the only way that's currently served is through freeway access. The Interstate 10, for example, that comes right through San Bernardino into Redlands. By creating a project like the Aero service, it gives people options on a different way to move. It connects them to job centers, health care services, recreational options, educational opportunities like here at the University of Redlands, I mean, there's so much opportunity that comes with providing transportation projects like the Aero service. Without the state's investment to make that a reality, it makes it very difficult to deliver projects like this.
In addition to local commuter service, a Metrolink locomotive-hauled coach train will also provide round-trip express service from Redlands to Los Angeles each morning, with a return trip from Los Angeles to Redlands each evening. Aero service will begin this year with a hybrid-type power source, using a combination of the cleanest diesel technologies available and electricity. However, SBCTA is already developing zero-emission hybrid hydrogen fuel cell and battery technology, providing a cleaner transit option for the community for years to come. This first-of-its-kind zero-emission self-powered vehicle is scheduled to arrive in San Bernardino County by late 2023.
My name is Dennis Keaton, District 3 Public Information Officer, and this is the Fix Sac 5 project in Sacramento County. This construction project rehabilitates and constructs high occupancy vehicle lanes on southbound and northbound Interstate 5. The project limits are just south of Elk Grove to just north of downtown Sacramento and the US 50 interchange region. Approximately 20 miles. This Senate Bill 1 project provides for increased carpool usage, transit time, reliability, and freight economic competitiveness through one of the more congested corridors in the Sacramento region. It also employs long life pavement design. Professor John Harvey describes what long life pavement is.
Long life pavement is a pavement designed for 40 years design life. That design is intended to not need anything more than maintenance in that design life of 40 years. The approach that was used by District 3 was developed by Caltrans Industry and the University of California Pavement Research Center. First used on Los Angeles 710, the freeway in the state with the heaviest traffic coming out of the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. And it involved 3 layers, a surface layer for top-down cracking, aging from the environment, a middle layer that's the main structural layer to reduce the bending, and a rich bottom layer on the bottom to help with bottom-up cracking from the bending under the heavy trucks and buses.
This project also provides another multimodal element in the reconstruction of the Casilada pedestrian overcrossing, serving John Cabrera Elementary School, Sam Brannan Junior High School, and connecting many businesses to residences on both sides of Interstate 5. District 3 also partnered with the City of Elk Grove for improvements on Laguna Boulevard and Elk Grove Boulevard, taking proactive steps for increased safety on those on and off ramps. As the project heads for completion of construction next year, it is important to reflect on the partnerships that made this project happen. Sacramento Transportation Authority provided funding for the environmental clearance for the high occupancy vehicle lanes. The Sacramento Area Council of Governments also provided funding for environmental clearance as well as design. The work done to prepare for the high occupancy lanes gave District 3 a head start for the comprehensive corridor pavement rehabilitation strategy along Interstate 5. Caltrans district staff work closely with those partners to advance the allocation of their funds by 5 years to the fiscal years 2018-2019, so that they could be used as much for the Senate Bill 1 competitive grant application. This allowed the high occupancy vehicle lane project to be combined with the pavement rehabilitation project so that all the work could be completed at the same time to provide benefits sooner and reduce the inconvenience to the traveling public. we present to you Fix Act 5.
Everyone allowing us the time to tell this SB1 story. It's a great story, and we're excited to highlight more of these types of projects in the future. Does anybody have any questions?
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Have any public comment? I have a question.
Yes, a quick question. Do we know what the ridership projections are for the Redlands project?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me get back with you on that, and I'd be happy to look into that for you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again, and thank you, Executive Director Weiss, for the time.
And I understand item 26 is withdrawn? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to information calendar. Ritesh?
Thank you. Microphone test. Thank you, Chair Eager, and good morning, Commissioners. Tabs 27 through 44 are information items that have been reviewed and found to have no issues raised by Commission staff. Therefore, individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a Commissioner or members of the public. Please note the changes to tabs 39, 42, and 44 as shown on the change list. And it's my understanding that we do have a request for public comment on tab 44.
Thank you. Do you have any commissioners who have questions on any of those? All right, then. For tab 44, we have, I think it's Laura DeMarco. Is Laura here today? Shirley Weiss? Okay. Thank you. I guess we'll move on.
Thank you. Moving to the consent calendar. Commissioners, tabs 52 and 45 will be presented individually prior to taking action on the consent calendar in its entirety. Tab 52 is an action item to approve 12 uncontested resolutions of necessity. Although the agenda says there are 27 RONs and the change list indicates 13 RONs, one additional parcel has been removed prior to this CTC meeting, but was unable to be included on the change list. Caltrans has come to an agreement with the property owner to sign the right-of-way agreement for the parcel labeled C-22142 in the book item. The specific parcel is located in Riverside County on Route 74. Please also note the two parcels on the change list labeled C-22152 and C-22153. Caltrans believes these two parcels were owned by one entity as described by the county assessor's office. However, the title company is claiming the owner of the two parcels is a different entity. Caltrans provided a first written offer to the owner as described by the county assessor, but were unable to make contact with the owners described by the title company, even though Caltrans conducted a reasonable diligence to locate the owner. Caltrans Division Chief of Right-of-Way, Deputy Division Chief of Right-of-Way, Renee Fletcher, is available to provide specifics if there are any questions from the Commission on tab 52.
Do we have any questions from Commissioner? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and be clear. There are a number of findings the commission has to make, and one of them is about an offer being made. And in the change list, there's a quote of the statute, and what it says is unless the owner cannot be located with reasonable diligence. So I think the key here is Caltrans reached out to the owner according to the county. They've worked with the title company to find someone else and also reach out to them. So it seems like they have done their due diligence to try to figure out who owns this property. And so that's part of why we wanted to pull it off, to just make sure that's in the record. And we appreciate Caltrans in this final draft change list being a little clearer than they were in the earlier versions.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Then I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, Martinez.
Moved by Davis, second by Martinez. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move to item 45, yes.
Good morning. Tab 45 is an action item. This is the final mitigated negative declaration for the Jack Peters Creek Bridge project. This project will widen the bridge and replace rail on State Route 1 in Mendocino County. Caltrans has determined that environmental impacts resulting from this project can be reduced to less than significant levels. Commission staff recently received written correspondence from property owners within the vicinity of this project, citing concerns with the noticing process and the content of the environmental document. That material is in your packet this morning. We do understand that some property owners are here today to testify as to their concerns. And also, Caltrans District 1 is present to speak to this item. Staff would like to thank all parties for their attendance and testimony today. This project is agendized to receive an e-resolution per this item, 45, as well as an allocation of PS&E and right-of-way support funding as part of item 97 later on in the agenda. I want to point out that this project is currently subject to an expiring allocation time extension as of this meeting. In discussions with Caltrans District 1 staff, they indicate that the CEQA document and process have been completed in accordance with applicable law, but they will speak today on how the communication process with stakeholders regarding this project can be improved. Based on the information that's been provided to staff at this point, staff is recommending your approval of this item with the explicit condition that Caltrans District 1 staff immediately improve communication and coordination with the adjacent property owners to address their concerns moving forward during the project design process. So with that, I would like to first turn it over to public comment and then to Caltrans for their remarks.
Thank you. So the first person we have is Gail Boyle. And Walter.
Good morning. Actually, my husband's going to speak first.
Morning. Okay, so good morning. And thank you for holding this over an extra day. We got to see more of San Diego, had a nice dinner last night. My wife had actually suggested yesterday, we figured we were going to be at the end of the agenda yesterday and didn't quite make it. She had suggested we were going to staple Snickers bars to each one of the handouts we had so that, everybody would be in a good mood about this. But this is a serious matter for us. And again, we'd like to thank you and Caltrans certainly for all the work you do for California and all you do to ensure that there's safe and efficient transportation in our beautiful state. And I'd also like to thank Doug Remedios and the staff for CTC for coming forward and helping us in the last minute because we were actually noticed at the last minute that this was actually occurring and wanted to thank them for helping us navigate this process. I'm Walter Boyle. This is my wife, Gail. And we are here to we are actually traveled from Mendocino to be here, our home in Mendocino to be here, and we are here to represent not only ourselves and our own interest in this Jack Peters Creek Bridge project, but those of all our neighbors who we've all subsequently heard from, or at least we've heard from many of them. So, and we're here to respectfully request that you defer action on tab 45, resolution E2212, and tab 97, the shop allocation, until such time as Caltrans provides, reopens that MND public comment period, recirculates the MND for public comment. And again, we provided some written material for everybody, and I'm just going to briefly refer to that. The actions before you today are premised on the commission finding that Caltrans has certified a mitigated negative declaration in compliance with applicable law. This is demonstrably not the case, particularly with respect to the public's right to timely notice and an opportunity to comment. So again, we have a retirement home, which we now reside in on the north bank of Jack Peters Creek. It directly overlooks the bridge. and is immediately contiguous to the project site and the major reconstruction. And I've provided a couple of exhibits, 1 and 2, to show you that. I've also shown that this bridge is a vital connector between some fairly large residential neighborhoods to the north of the bridge, which we are in, and the Mendocino town itself. And so there are a large number of people that are going to be impacted by this project who are simply unaware of it because the MND was not, they were not noticed that it was available and didn't have the opportunity to comment. I wanted to apparently, just point out a couple things. When the project was released in December, again, we feel we should have been noticed, that we are directly contiguous. We found out subsequently that not only were we not noticed, but none of our neighbors were noticed. And even parties that we've become aware of now that had expressed interest to Caltrans in this project were not noticed either until after the public comment period had closed. So, and just to give you a couple examples of some of the things that have come up that we're concerned about, again, this is a vital connector on Highway 1 between Mendocino town and Fort Bragg, which is immediately to the north, about 10 minutes away. In Fort Bragg is where the emergency medical services are and where the hospital is. And there are plans in this MND apparently to have some full closures of the bridge overnight. So, and the question is, so what happens to someone who has a heart attack in Mendocino Township in the middle of the night and needs to get an ambulance and needs to get to a hospital? And there simply is not any other close access. So again, our neighbors want to hear about that issue, and I think one of our neighbors wrote a letter to you about that. On a personal note, we spent a lot of time, we're kind of built on a hillside right above this bridge, and the question was, is this a safe place to build? And so we had an extensive, and relied on an extensive geotechnical report, which indicated there is some instability to this hillside. And in fact, there's been a number of ancient landslides. And actually, since the report, and since we started building, there was actually a landslide further up the creek on the hillside. So this idea that Caltrans is going to come in, for example, and do pile driving, 100 or so feet from our house that we just finished, is pretty disturbing to us personally. And again, we'd like to hear how that's been thought through and what's actually been done about that. And again, we ended up having to put in this extensive bioswale system to take care of all the water coming off of our property. We ended up having to put in 33 piers essentially down to bedrock to stabilize the structure. So, and again, we did this with drilling, we didn't do it with pile driving. So again, we want to hear about those kinds of things, and those are the kind of things that I mean, there's a lot of other issues in the report that we feel are inaccurate, and so that's why we're asking you to defer action on tab 45 and resolution and tab 97. And I thank you for your time.
Do I get to say? Oh, I didn't say. Thank you so much for hearing us today and letting us come before you. I just wanted to echo what my husband was saying and just point out more so that there's some things in the community that, like, I know economics and livability are in Caltrans' creed, and I want to make sure that that continues. You hear all these things about the ends justifying the means. Well, what about the means justifying the ends? So we want to keep that economic viability and livability throughout the process. And I know these communities are still suffering and trying to, after COVID, businesses haven't opened, and now it's it relies on tourists, and now they can't get back and forth. Those are my main things. Is just, to open the public comment and defer 45 and 97, so we can, and our neighbors and the community at large, because some of the businesses, they didn't even know about it. So thank you so much.
And thank you for coming to speak to us today.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. We've heard a lot of really good things. Just
really nice
again, the spirit of this meeting, I think someone said yesterday about, your obvious attention, interest, And, you know, the whole culture here appears to be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's not too late to bring those Snickers bars.
And I understand we have public comment virtually?
Yes, correct. Thank you, Chair Eager. This written submission comes from Carice Markovich. They write, I am Carice Markovich, a resident of the neighborhood directly northeast of the Jack Peters Creek Bridge. Although I specifically asked to be on the distribution list for the project, I did not receive the project document until after the comment period ended. In the document, there is no mitigation for traffic during full bridge nighttime closures. Therefore, the health and well-being of residents and visitors may be in jeopardy if a fire or health emergency occurs during the closures. Also, I agree with comments by Walter Boyle. This project should be reopened for public comment. Mendocino residents and businesses need to be made aware of this project and have the ability to submit comments. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And I believe we have District 1, Caltrans.
Madam Chair, we have one more comment.
Oh, sorry.
So I do see that we now have an attendee with their hand raised. Anna Marie Weeble.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're free to comment.
Hello? Thank you so much. I also want to comment on this project. I'm asking you to pull this item from the agenda, as Caltrans did not inform the closest neighbors nor anyone else who made it clear that they wanted to be contacted about this project. I'm one of those. I'm not a next door neighbor, but I submitted comments for the 6/22 Mendocino County Board of Supervisors meeting, and they included this project along with other consent calendar items, just like you are, and were not willing to remove it, postpone it, or make it possible for the public to discuss this project. They adopted the resolution authorizing the processing of a consolidated coastal development permit for this bridge by the California Coastal Commission for Caltrans to widen and upgrade the Jack Peters Creek Bridge. I'm concerned that Caltrans is attempting to widen many local communities, for example, Gualala and Cleon, and already has done so. The Scenic Highway 1 and many local bridges, Salmon Creek Bridge, Little River Bridge, Hare Creek Bridge, Pudding Creek Bridge, the last California Highway historic 77-year-old timber trestle Albion River Bridge, Elk Creek Bridge, and Jack Peters Creek Bridge, just to name a few. Widening ruins the scenic value of these roads next to the ocean and often makes areas more dangerous as people are just driving faster. And in your memo, we refer to the project to be located in Siskiyou County. I think that should be changed. And my name is Anne Marie Weibel, and I live on the Mendocino coast. And this is very important that you remove this from this agenda and look at it carefully before you just approve it along with all the other consent calendar items. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Caltrans District 1 Director, you have comments for us, specifically to talk about the communication issue?
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Eager and Commissioners. My name is Richard Mullen. I'm the Deputy District Director for Caltrans District 1. First off, I do want to thank, I've had a chance to meet the Boyles, and I want to put a thank you to them for traveling down here and sharing their information on the project and their concerns. I want to make sure that it's clear that stakeholder engagement is a priority to the community, to us, and especially for the project and the public. Without good engagement, things can get lost in product delivery, and ultimately it's all about the people. So even though we did follow the law for CEQA, for the environmental process, it's clear that we need to do a better job on outreach. And with that, we have already established a meeting. We had a meeting scheduled with the Boyles a week ago. Ironically, it rained. I say ironically because this winter's been pretty dry. But we do have another one scheduled for Monday coming up here. So they're going to be traveling quite a bit. And, we are now going to have a public meeting in about a month and a half. We're going to get that scheduled with all the property owners. We're going to make sure all the ones adjacent to, and it'll be noticed. There's also the coastal development process that's coming up. That is another part of the CEQA process, that there's opportunity to comment on the design and any features that they feel to. With consideration of the aspects of the project itself, this structure is an 85-year-old structure. As discussed, it's a widening and rail upgrade project. The emergency access, we will always allow emergency access through our jobs. We make accommodations for that. So even though there may be a closure, we either have setups on each side for emergency access or that we make accommodations for emergency access in general. That's our standard. With the input that we heard on the public comment, there was one property owner that did mention that she wanted to have the NOI, notice of intent, mailed to her, and it was an oversight. We got, but like I mentioned before, we are going to be scheduling this meeting with all of them to go over these details that are on there, on the project description, some more details, and how it impacts not only the businesses, the adjacent property owners, and hear their concerns and address them accordingly. With that, I am open to any other questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Liu first, and then Commissioner Davis.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
While you engage in this process, have you finalized the mitigated negative declaration? Is that considered final?
We have completed the circulation, but we have not. Yes, actually, this meeting, after this meeting, it would be finalized after that.
Commissioner Davis.
How long is the construction schedule?
It'll be approximately a year and a half.
And what was done in the testing that Caltrans did to sort of take into consideration the point that the Boyles made about the stability issues that they dealt with specifically for their project, for where their home is, that this project not impacting the work that they and others might have done?
The geotech effort was confined to the area underneath the structure itself. I'd have to get back to you on what our geotech would feel any impacts to their property that's a distance from our project site. And that would be something we can go over with them at this meeting. In fact, I think we're going to be talking to them about that Monday.
Thank you, Chair Eager. A question and then perhaps a suggestion. The question, Mr. Mullen, if we do delay until our May meeting, how does that impact your schedule?
It has a strong possibility of delaying it a full construction season. We have on target for the coastal development hearing in July, so it's 3 or 4 months away. Delaying this, both tabs would delay resources for the design work. And so there's a strong possibility that construction would be delayed on this project that's much needed, as I mentioned before, 85-year-old bridge with the bridge rails that are deficient. We feel we definitely can address these the comments that have been in the letters by meeting with them one-on-one, and feel the process that is laid out through the CD coastal development process. Those are good avenues, part of the CEQA process too, that we can address these comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Inman?
Well, I'm a little confused, and the letter we received talked about the Coastal Commission process you already had the permits, so a little confused on
That,
where the project really is. And then my follow-up question really to Commissioner Guardinos is, if you're going to that body in July, we meet again prior to that. So in response to the request before us, what would be the delay to the project by us deferring until you had a chance to really sit down with the immediate adjacent property owners?
yeah, to answer your first, or clarify, I should say, the first one, the coastal development permit has not been acquired. This was in the county planning, Mendocino County jurisdiction, and so they would be issuing the county or the coastal development permit. But on a job like this, that you can request a consolidated permit that would have the state coastal take jurisdiction. And that's what was approved by the county of Mendocino. So now it goes to the state coastal. And that is the hearing that'll be coming up, targeting for July.
And your second part of the
And
question
sec-
is, if we defer to May,
if you
does that
defer-
still give you time?
That'll be extremely tight, because the allocation for the one phase or the design phase work is part of that effort, and we need the resources in order to get to that point. So it's going to be very tight on making that schedule.
Deputy District Director Mullen, forgive me, I'm fighting a cold, which is why I'm still wearing my mask. And so perhaps I wasn't clear. I had a question and then potentially a suggestion. So if I may, through the chair, we have a town hall in Tulare on April 13th and 14th. If it worked for our staff, for you, for the commission, to have your meeting next week and have that public hearing that you mentioned sometime in the next few weeks, would that keep everything on track to bring this back at the Tulare Town Hall on April 13th and 14th?
Yeah, that would work. We can do that.
Okay. Because I just want to say, all too often on these issues, it is very cantankerous. I want to thank you for how you expressed yourself when you came up, respecting concerned neighbors who traveled all the way down from Mendocino, acknowledging where you and your team could do a better job, and trying to look for solutions and already having time scheduled for those meetings. So I just want to commend you and your team. We're all works in progress. We're all learning as people and professionals. So thank you for that. And to the Boyles, thank you. Other than forgetting the Snickers bars for coming all the way here. And no, because my power bars that were up here were gone when I came this morning. But thank you for the way that you have presented yourselves this morning too, to try to find solutions. So if that works for our staff and for the commission through the chair, that we come back to this on April 13th and 14th in Tulare, I would make that motion.
I think we still have a couple of commissioners. Commissioner Falcone, did you still have a question?
Actually, I don't, because my very wise vice chair addressed it. I was trying to wrap my head around doing an action today with, with the effort that you still need, that Caltrans District 1 is intending to move forward with the Boyles and the stakeholders. So appreciate your efforts in that, sir, and I am completely comfortable with the April, deferring this to the April meeting. So if there was a motion, I'll second it.
Commissioner Martinez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, thank you for holding yourself accountable and your staff in regards to the oversight. So my question to you is that if we do move forward, I definitely support Vice Chair and Ms. Falcone's recommendation for the April meeting, can you just please share with me as we move forward, just based on the, really quickly on the project development procedure manual, requires a public hearing for any project, right? So in regards to the notice of opportunity for the public hearing, you know, are you gonna start that process? Because it says that you have to go through, you know, ensure that you're able to reach out to the county and then notice the public hearing may be published in a newspaper on and so forth. I'm not going to go into those details. Obviously, you're well aware of your process, but wanting to make sure that when we do come and we're able to move forward in April, that process will be completed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I
Madam
think
Chair?
Commissioner Liu, you still had a question?
Yeah, I have, no, it's a new
concern?
question. It's, yeah, well, it's a comment and a question, I think.
Okay.
In my experience, in a former life at a government agency, we've lost CEQA cases on less than failing to provide notice to contiguous landowners and someone who'd requested notice. So I would encourage you to keep that CEQA process open and to try to correct those deficiencies in some official manner before we're required to make a finding that you're in compliance with CEQA. That would help. Thank you. Oh, and I also question about whether staff can remember that we can deal with 97. We're not going to mess that up and pass that one. Okay. We're going to do this one
We
separately.
will not present 97 to you.
Okay.
I mean, after we take official action on this item.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would suggest that with 97, that we vote to defer those two, to acknowledge that Caltrans did everything they need to deliver the project and meet the timely use of funds requirement, and then therefore it's on the commission that it's a little bit later, so that the funds are not at risk of getting lost.
Just a clarification question, though, the 97 talks for 70 different projects.
So we'll pull it out.
We're pulling the one, we're not deferring all of them.
We're not going to defer all of
Deferring
them,
the one.
just
Okay.
these two allocations.
Thank you. Yeah, just want to make sure.
Just to be clear, thank you. Yes. These two allocations, we're not going to defer all 97. Do I have that right, Gertish?
You have that correct. Thank you.
Yeah, so Commissioner, Vice Chair Guardino, do you want to clarify your motion?
And Teresa and others, does this work from a staffing perspective? Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to move that we defer action on item 45 on the Jack Peters Creek Bridge project until our town hall in Tulare on April 13th and 14th. Allowing time for...
Just to be clear, we will notice a meeting before the town hall, so it won't be at the town
Yes.
hall. We'll have a short meeting on April 13th, just
Well,
before the town
commission
hall
meeting.
starts. Well,
Yes.
we will have a commission meeting separate from the town hall.
Right.
So
Physically.
physically in Tulare. Yes.
You need all that in the motion?
No, I think we get it.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Falcon.
Commissioner Falcone, seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll see you in
Great.
April.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Chair Eager and Commissioners, I will complete the consent calendar. Tabs 46 through 51 and 53 through 61 are action items listed as part of the consent calendar. Please note the changes to tabs 59 and 60 as shown on the change list, as they were withdrawn prior to the meeting. With these changes, staff recommends approval of tabs 46 through 51 and 53 through 61 on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do have public comment at this time. We have Anna Marie Weeble. Anna Marie, you're now muted and free to comment.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I guess my comments were in regards to tab 46. I didn't realize that I was supposed to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. I didn't realize that I was supposed to let you know ahead of time. I wanted to talk about tab 46. I wanted to ask you to pull this item from the agenda as well. I realize you're already voted on that, so I'm a little behind schedule. I apologize for that, but if you don't mind, I would like to just tell you why I felt that way. It was the same situation where Caltrans did not inform the closest neighbors nor anyone else who made it clear that they wanted to be contacted about this project. As a member of Albion Bridge Stewards, I want to bring to your attention that we submitted a letter to the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors informing them on 2/7/22 to remove the issue about Elk Creek Bridge from the consent calendar due to failure to provide the required public notice and also to not relinquish the local coastal plan regulatory authority over the CDP to the Coastal Commission. And also, we do not agree with the proposal. The Elk Creek Bridge does not need to be torn down. The logging altered hydrology of the creek appears to have scoured the bed of the creek along a bridge foundation element, and the adjacent bank problems that Caltrans could conceptually address by supporting proper land use conservation practices upstream and sustainable restoration of the creek's bed and banks at and near the bridge. If truly that cannot be done, an environmental impact report is needed, and an MND is not sufficient. Also, Caltrans's documents show that they propose to take land by eminent domain to replace the Highway 1 Elk Creek Bridge, much to the displeasure of landowners, especially Bobby Beacon. Please remove, well, I was going to ask you to please remove this from the consent calendar, but I guess I missed the boat on this. So I was listening to your meeting all day yesterday, waiting for tab 46. I want to tell you that I feel you're doing a great job administering, your tasks. So Anne Marie Weibel, Albion Bridge Stewards, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
I see no other virtual attendees indicating they wish to make comment at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners who have comments or questions? Then I will entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar. I think you already did. We
Madam
already
Chair,
do
you
that?
already have a motion, and we don't have a second yet, that I'm aware of.
Then we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
I thought he made the motion.
Oh, okay.
You did the motion.
Okay, I thought somebody.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Falcone seconds. All
Thank
those
you.
in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. We are now on environmental matters. Jose?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. Item 62 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Old Arcata Road Rehabilitation and Pathway Improvements Project. The Arcata City Council determined that environmental impacts could be reduced to less than significant levels. Staff recommends your approval. Commissioner, would you like me to combine both items into one?
Yes, let's do
Yes,
that.
please.
All right. Agenda item 63 is an action item. This is the final EIR and addendum for the Sacramento International Airport Master Plan, Elkhorn Boulevard Extension Project. The Sacramento County Board of Supervisors adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impact. Staff recommends approval of agenda items 62 and 63, recommending your approval.
Thank you. Any commissioners have questions? I will entertain a motion. That was Commissioner Inman. Do we have a second? Second. Commissioner Liu? All those in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me, opposed? Motion carries. We will move to tab 64. Bridget?
Commissioners, tab 64 is an informational item. Eric Frisch, Deputy Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development at the City of Rochester, will provide a presentation on the Interstate 490 Interloop Transformation Project. This presentation will be followed by a presentation by Tony Dang, Deputy Director for Sustainability at Caltrans, on California's proposed Reconnecting Communities Highways to Boulevards pilot program. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Brigitte. And is my presentation going to be on the screen? Ah, perfect. All right. Am I shifting through the slides, or are you?
We are. Just say next slide when you're ready.
Will do. All right. Thank you. Without further ado, I know I don't have a lot of time here. So thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to speak with you today. I apologize for that noise. I have family all across the state of California, from Tahoe to San Diego, and although that sounds like a song lyric, I assure you it's true. I am Deputy Commissioner here at the City of Rochester in the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. However, up until January 1, I was in our Department of Environmental Services, first as the city's transportation planner, and later as manager of special projects. So I only recently have moved over from entirely work within the public right-of-way to entirely work outside of the public right-of-way. But in my previous role, and as I continue today, I've had the honor of working on two different highway removal efforts here in the city of Rochester, one that has been completed and one that is just getting started. Next slide. So where is Rochester? I don't expect you to know the answer to that question. We're on the south shore of Lake Ontario, where the Genesee River and the Erie Canal meet. We are a city of over 200,000 people and the hub for the 1.2 million person Finger Lakes region. We are closer to Toronto than to New York City, and we are Bills fans, not Jets or Giants fans. After 70 years of decline, we are growing again. So we lost about a third of our population between 1950 and the most recent count in 2020, but we are finally seeing growth again. Next slide. On the left-hand side is Rochester in 1930, prior to the urban era, or the auto era beginning. And on the right-hand side is 1961, in the throes of the urban renewal period, which tore out so much of the heart of Rochester and many other similar older industrial cities in the Northeast and West. As you can see in the picture on the right, there is a considerable amount of demolition arcing around the northern edge of the downtown area. That is what would become the Interloop Expressway, and that is what I'm here to talk to you about today. Next slide. As background, the Interloop Expressway was built to encircle the downtown area and quickly collect and distribute traffic in order to address congestion and enable downtown to compete in the auto age, or at least that's how it was sold. However, it never lived up to those expectations, partly because other expressways were not built, thankfully, from my perspective. And in fact, this facility likely not only contributed to, but accelerated the decline that we have witnessed in our city. It isolated the downtown area from adjacent neighborhoods, limiting access by anyone not in a car. It depressed property values and discouraged development on its ring. Created safety, noise, and other quality of life issues for adjacent residents and businesses, really creating a moat, basically, between downtown and adjacent neighborhoods. Its construction led to the demolition of hundreds of buildings and the relocation of thousands of residents, and destroyed social networks that had been established. Over time, its deteriorating condition and limited utility only exacerbated, made those conditions, those issues worse. Removal of the highway was being discussed as early as 1990, as you can see with the images on the side of the screen there, as early as 1990. So we're quite ahead of our time when it came to talking about highway removal here in Rochester. Next slide. Why would we do this? Well, I think the answer to that question has evolved quite a bit over time. But I think if you ask that question today, equity is absolutely critical. The construction of this facility created inequitable conditions that, for those that were left behind in the neighborhoods that had been torn apart by its construction. And those inequitable conditions exist to this day. But removal of the highway gives us an opportunity to heal those wounds and to restore trust in our communities. But this is more than that, of course. It's also about asset management. I'm talking to transportation people, right? It's an overbuilt facility. It certainly was in the section that we've now completed. And it was certainly an unloved facility. Removal of the highway will reduce life cycle costs while generating considerable investment. Can reestablish that historic street grid that our city was based upon and built upon, and strengthen bicycle and pedestrian conditions that are so important in an urban context, which improves transportation equity, public health, and supports our small businesses. The Interloop East project, the final design plan for which is shown at the bottom of the screen there, was completed in 2017. And the remainder of the expressway, which we refer to as Interloop North, is now at the end of the planning phase. And thanks to Governor Kathy Hochul's announcement just a couple of weeks ago, it is now fully funded. So we are moving ahead. Next slide. This is the timeline that we had for the Interloop East project that is complete. So as you see, a planning study was completed in 2001. There was a bit of a lag. And then the actual project development process began roughly in 2009, accelerated quickly when on our third attempt for Tiger funding under the Obama administration, we were successful in 2013, which then led us to have to go from preliminary design to advertising construction in about 9 months or so. So I'm sure you can imagine what that was like. Construction then began in the fall of 2014 and lasted 3 full construction seasons. The project created about 6 acres of land, and that development began as soon as that construction was wrapping up. As you can see, the cost is not substantial. These do not have to be hugely expensive projects. Our project here that removed this expressway and reconnected the street grid, created land for development, cost about $24 million. But it's leveraged about $250 million in development and counting. And as you see, that's not an easy feat in Rochester, where our economy maybe is not as strong as some of your cities. And we have developed over 500 housing units, more than half of which are below market rate, subsidized in some manner to make them affordable. Next slide. Enough of me talking. I'm going to go through quickly with some pictures. So this is downtown in 2015. You can see the loop around the downtown area. Highlighted in blue is the Interloop East section, shown just as construction was starting. And next slide. You can see in 2021, the highway has been removed and the development that has taken place. And you can see that reestablished street grid. And again, hundreds of new units of housing, commercial opportunities, hotel, etc. Next slide. These are a series of before and afters, just so you can get a context to understand how much things have changed. This is at Union and Charlotte Street in 2012. And next slide. This is that same view in 2021. The expressway is gone. Charlotte Street, which had been bisected for more than 50 years, is reconnected. And now you see development taking place. Next slide. This is Union Street at Broad Street. You can see the sunken expressway, Broad Street Bridge going over the expressway, no curb ramps on that bridge. It was really, as you can tell, contributed to inaccessibility. Next slide. This is that same view today. Again, you've got your 2-way bike facility, infill housing development, again, a mix of affordable and market rate. You can see a community coming back to life here. Next slide. Lastly, for these before and afters, this is Union Street at Adventure Place. Now you can see this old style, substandard merge weave pattern that existed when we shoehorned this expressway into the urban conditions. And the next slide shows you where we're at today. This is where the neighborhood of play is being built. You can see the National Museum of Play in the background, and a major redevelopment involving a new street, over 200 housing units, a hotel, and a museum expansion, all being facilitated simply by removing this highway and reconnecting neighborhoods. Next slide. This is the Interloop North Corridor. This is the one that we are now working on. As I mentioned, we're completing the planning phase and we'll begin the final engineering and design phase for the area that's highlighted in orange there, rudimentarily highlighted by hand. Traffic volumes here are considerably higher, but of course the opportunities are greater too. We estimate nearly 25 acres of land could be created through this. Next slide. This is the preferred concept that is resulting from the planning phase. This is very clearly expressed by the community as the preference. Key considerations have to do with minimizing displacement of existing residents, especially in the Market View Heights area, which I guess if you're, depending on where you're facing, it's in the upper corner there, where you can see existing single family style, lower density housing. That area, residents very concerned about displacement. Preservation of quality freight access for employers. We have a number of major companies that exist just north of the corridor, including the 8th largest brewery in the country, the Genesee Brewery. And you know, their focus was not so much on needing a highway, but rather making sure that there's that generally unimpeded and direct access to I-490 that you can see just on the edge of downtown, and making sure that full access is maintained. By removing the expressway and eliminating those substandard merge weave patterns will actually lead to more reliable travel times for them. Next slide. This is the timeline that we're following for Interloop North. So again, wrapping up the planning study phase right now and getting into preliminary design shortly thereafter. If all goes according to plan, we'll be under construction in fall of 2024. And again, lasting 3 or so construction seasons, and then bringing the development to place. About $100 million project. And again, our governor has announced full funding for this project. Next slide. Just a few examples of what could be as we remove that highway. This is a existing K through 12 public school that does not have any playing fields. So one strongly expressed preference is to remove the highway, create some housing opportunities, as well as open space and playing field for the school. Next slide. This is an existing high accident location interchange right behind our city hall here. And this would facilitate some infill development and a much more calmed intersection for everyone traversing it. And next slide. And this is the area around historic Olmsted designed neighborhood square known as Franklin Square. That was fully bisected by construction of the expressway, reconnecting that square with the historic post office and reestablishing that sense of community in this part of town. Those are all my slides. I hope I didn't go too far over. I thank you very much for your attention and again for your interest. And if there are any questions, I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Do we have any questions for Eric?
I think actually if we could hold for questions after Tony's presentation, that might be best if Tony's on.
Do we have Tony?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Tony.
All right. Well, good morning, Chair Eager and commissioners, and thank you for having me this morning. I'm Tony Dang. I'm the Deputy Director for Sustainability at Caltrans, and today I'm here to present on the state's proposed Reconnecting Communities Highways to Boulevards program. So one of the actions that was identified within the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, or CAPTI, was to explore the creation of a Highways to Boulevard pilot program. And I'm really excited today to share the preliminary vision for what this pilot program could look like that was included in the governor's proposed budget that was released in January. Next slide. So before I dive into the details of the state's proposed pilot program, I did want to take a moment to highlight the new federal Reconnecting Communities program. So this is a brand new, first of its kind discretionary grant program that was authorized in the fall in the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, or IIJA. And this program is one of the first ever to really explicitly consider the social and economic ramifications of transportation infrastructure by reconnecting communities that have been historically divided by highways. So the federal program will be supporting this concept through supporting planning, design, demolition, and reconstruction of street grids, parks, and other infrastructure to really address the legacy impacts of past transportation infrastructure investments. There is going to be approximately $1 billion that will be made available through this federal program over the next 5 years. And the Federal Highways Administration has advised that a notice of funding opportunity for this program should be expected in spring of this year. We really anticipate that the Federal Reconnecting Communities program will be extremely competitive, and so we really view the proposed state pilot program to serve as a strong companion program to the federal one, and will play a really key role in helping to draw down the discretionary federal funds to California. Next slide. So in terms of the state pilot program, first off, I really want to underscore that this is part of the broader transportation package that has been proposed in the governor's budget. It is going through the budget process within the legislature, and it will have to ultimately be approved in the budget process before it gets stood up. However, the proposal does include $150 million to set up this program through general fund investments. For the remainder of today's item, I'll go over the proposed goals and outcomes of the pilot program as described in the trailer bill language, as well as some of the initial thinking in terms of the types of projects that the program could potentially fund. Next slide. So in concept, the pilot program would award competitive grants to local and regional public agencies for planning or implementation of transformation or conversion projects of key underutilized highways in the state into multimodal corridors that serve residents of underserved communities, really focused through the development of complete streets, creation of open space and parks, and supporting affordable housing development. Specifically, there are 5 proposed statutory objectives of the program. The first of which is to really advance and improve the health and equity outcomes for our underserved communities through the removal of various barriers associated with transportation infrastructure. The second of which is to really improve access to opportunity and really focusing in on improving travel options within communities, as well as reducing the combined transportation and housing costs for our underserved communities. The third statutory objective of the program is really to not just create affordable housing, but really create a platform through a transportation-focused program for affirmatively furthering fair housing. So what that means is to really take meaningful action to really overcome the patterns of residential segregation. The fourth statutory objective of the program is to avoid or minimize displacement, whether it's direct or indirect. And then lastly, there's an objective for the program to really mainstream community-based transportation planning practices and really to use this program as a way to really develop community-driven and community-oriented infrastructure needs. Next slide. So similar to the federal program, the state pilot program would consist of funding for both a planning component as well as an implementation component. So here on this slide, you'll see some of the potential planning type of activities that this program could support, which includes various forms of community engagement, consultation, or leadership development activities, supporting the development of planning documents, whether they're feasibility studies, community-driven needs assessments, or conceptual designs. This program would also support the development of necessary environmental documents and review. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight this issue around interim design solutions. So as you saw with Eric's presentation, the timeline for these types of really transformative projects can take a very long time. And I think that we as a state recognize that. And within this proposed program, we also want to, within the planning component of the program, support the development of early implementation action plans that really help to develop these interim design solutions to really implement something as quickly as we can to really, and then to also kind of support the demonstration of the proof of concept of what the ultimate vision could look like. Next slide. In terms of the types of implementation projects, the trailer bill language specifies a couple of different types, including the conversion or capping of access-controlled highways, the conversion of conventional highways serving as main streets into kind of a multimodal surface street. And then, really to recognize that we don't want to kind of presuppose what the solutions look like or dictate what the solutions look like. The trailer bill language also includes eligibility around non-conversion or non-capping projects that significantly enhance multimodal connectivity. And then lastly, as I mentioned, there, in addition to funding the development of early action plans, there would also be funding eligibility for the implementation of those early action plans. Next slide. Now, in order to really ensure that equity remains at the forefront of the state's transportation investments, the trailer bill language for this proposal proposes directing 100% of the program investments to projects that benefit underserved communities. The trailer bill language also directs Caltrans to establish a data-driven process for defining underserved communities, and for the department to consider but not be limited to existing state definitions, including Cal EnviroScreen or AB 1550 low-income community definitions. The trailer bill language also specifies that all projects funded through this program would have to clearly demonstrate a direct and meaningful benefit to an underserved community. In terms of the requirements for both planning and implementation projects, you'll see here on the screen that projects will have to be located along or on a state highway or state operated route. Projects will have to enhance multimodal transportation and specifically by enhancing access to destinations through walking, biking, and transit. Projects will also be required to demonstrate not just community involvement and engagement in the development of the project, but also community leadership in the development of the project concepts. Projects will also be required to demonstrate partnership with the local Caltrans district, right? Because, as state-operated routes, we really want to make sure that the department is at the table and working in lockstep with our community partners to develop these projects. And then lastly, there's a requirement around demonstrating a commitment of local or regional or federal funding to really match the state's investments. Last slide. So Caltrans really looks forward to working with our federal, regional, and local partners in really realizing the goals of this program and setting this up as a real trailblazing program for the nation. With that, thank you for your time this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Inman?
Thank you, Chair Eager. I'll be brief because I know we're behind on our agenda. But I didn't hear any mention of jobs at all. And I think if we're really going to have livable communities, that we really need to integrate. And clearly Rochester, it looks like the university is the major employer there in town, and they've suffered over the years, as a presenter suggested, but with losing some manufacturing. And so I think for all of us, we're really looking at livability and success. We've got to have the jobs balance in there. And we heard from Hassan yesterday in the data-driven analysis they're doing of really looking at their job center and trying to figure out, and their average commute here is 15 miles. But I think if we lose sight of what the economies of these regions are, we could have some great neighborhoods, but people need access, and they need access to being able to have a livelihood. So that's my only concern. I didn't hear any mention of any.
Thank you. Eric or Tony, did you have an answer for Commissioner Inman on were the jobs and the workforce connection a part of this analysis?
Sure. Absolutely. You know what? The interesting thing is that when we remove this highway, we actually open up opportunities by bringing those opportunities closer to where people are. In our inner city communities, a large percentage of the population do not have access to an automobile, and so highway infrastructure is not necessarily supporting their ability to access jobs and services. And by doing these projects, I can tell you in our our economic development organization will back me up on this, that projects like this that are turning around what it means to be in downtown Rochester are making this area much more attractive for investment. And when we bring those jobs and investments here to the core of the city, they are much more in reach of our residents and support our entire city's growth in a way that highways, historically at least, facilitated that long distance driving that really led to so much job creation being located on our periphery rather than in our core.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I'll add is, one of the proposed statutory objectives of this program is really to improve access to opportunity. And I think a part of that is really increasing access to economic opportunity as well as educational opportunities. So I can assure you that we are definitely thinking about, how the employment angle ties into this proposed program.
Great, thank you. As an economic developer, I second that emotion that we do need to make sure that as we look at how transportation affects our communities and affects our economic development and economic vitality of those areas that have been left behind before, we appreciate you considering all of those as we move forward with these innovations. Anyone else? We down at the end? Commissioner Martinez?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be very quickly. Just for Eric, one of the questions in regards to displacement, as one of the commissioners mentioned about, jobs but also there's small businesses within that downtown corridor in which you're trying to create. And so what displacement protections do you have for the current residents and or small business owners in that area?
That's a very good question. It's a very hot topic. We have a new administration here that is really focused on housing issues and housing affordability issues. In the Market View Heights area that I referenced, some of the strategies that we are proposing to implement are to be pretty clear about what type of development will be permitted in that area, and that we will focus on a mix of affordable homeownership opportunities and maintaining the existing context, land use context in that area. We will also be seeking opportunities for various tenant protections that are, let's say, legal under the Constitution of New York State. So we continue to work on determining the exact methods that we can achieve that. But rest assured that when we work on crafting the land use strategy, we will not be employing the same broad brush that we used in our previous project. We'll be very deliberate in working with the community to provide development opportunities that support rather than detract or compete with existing residents. As for businesses, we have a number of avenues to support entrepreneurship and really to prioritize Black and Brown owned businesses that either are seeking to launch or are looking to grow. And so our business development team is taking advantage of a number of different resources to prioritize those business owners and those businesses.
Fantastic. And then my question for Mr. Dang, as it pertains to this pilot, will we incorporate any kind of metrics as it pertains before this pilot is adopted to move forward as it pertains to reducing the amount of vehicles mile travel, ensuring that we have multimodal accessibility, and then obviously connecting that with land use and data, but as well to the point that I'm making is as we continue to move forward towards complete streets and moving towards a pilot like this, a lot of infrastructure projects that we embark on or Caltrans embarks on, we always talk about benefits of what the infrastructure is going to do, but there's always impacts as well. And so what protections are we going to put So as we move forward with these pilots and whatever community decides to apply for this pilot, that we're going to ensure that we're not only speaking about the benefits, but also the impacts. Because, specifically when it's a big project like this, there are a tremendous amount of impacts that occur not just with current residents, but with the business community. And we don't have any, sometimes it's when the construction is being done that we're talking about mitigation, the city is, or the transportation agency. And so how can we ensure that we're able to put some protections and or mitigation efforts before we move forward with this pilot?
Thanks, Commissioner Martinez. So the trailer bill language is rather sparse, and one thing I should highlight within the trailer bill is that it directs the department to develop guidelines for the program within 1 year of the program's approval. So I anticipate that issues like what you're raising would be handled through the public guidelines development process.
Great, thank you. We look forward to that. Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, I think I might get the same answer. Deputy Director Dang, I was wondering, because I don't think I heard explicitly how you were going to select which projects would be part of the pilot. And I know that you solicited recommendations from regional agencies and local agencies, but I was wondering if the public was also going to play a role, and maybe the employers would play a role in helping select the projects.
It's definitely, thank you, Commissioner Liu, for the question. And similarly, I do think this will have to be handled once the program is approved. It is our intent, however, to really work with our local and regional partners and communities to really focus in on that selection of communities. But it's a little bit hard to kind of presuppose which communities we'll select right now without the program being approved or the guidelines being developed. But I guess one thing I'll emphasize is, one thing that we heard very directly and clearly during the CAPTI development process is that stakeholders do not want this to be a state-dictated process in terms of, selecting and finalizing the communities, and we are definitely taking that to heart, and we want to work with our local regional agencies and our community-based organizations to have this be more of a bottoms-up process.
Thank you. We have Vice Chair Gardino, and then Commissioner Falcone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll be brief, both to Eric and Tony. Eric, excellent presentation. Thank you for sharing best practices in Rochester. We're going to steal your best practices. We don't call it plagiarism. We call it best practices.
We would love to do that.
I'm very impressed that in this new phase, how quickly you're able to move now that you've had the experience of the first phase, which makes me ask Tony, how quickly are you planning to move forward so that we can not only learn from Rochester, but also learn timeliness? And also, one of your criteria was matching funds. And as we are looking at improvements in underserved communities, which may not always have matching funds, how do we square that knot?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are trying to be as proactive as we can, knowing that the federal program funding opportunity will be coming online very, very shortly. And so we do view drawing down federal funds as a form of match to the state program. So I think we'll be working to kind of roll out a process to really coordinate with our local and regional partners and communities to really well position ourselves for the federal program in the coming months.
Thank you. Commissioner Falcone?
Thank you, Chair. It's so neat to be sitting next to two very wise commissioners. You've pretty much addressed a lot of my questions regarding really how to do this right. I want to say that this program for me personally is probably the most exciting one. It is a pilot, and it also, is an opportunity to do something really right, to address social injustices to certain communities that have historically been impacted by highway projects, although, you know, they're needed. I was very interested in Mr. Fritsch's presentation and hearing about the underperformance of the highway, and wanted to actually know here, you know, kind of what the process was from the community to really elevate this as a priority for the city of Rochester to address. I'm really interested in sort of the human aspect and how this kind of came about. Not so much about the underperformance of the highway, but more about like what was the community's process to make this a priority. And I ask this question because this I think this exercise that we're undertaking right now is going to be of interest to many communities in California. And they're going to be watching how this pilot is implemented. And again, I'm interested in how we're going to do this, the guidelines, and really doing this right. So if Mr. Fritsch can address my question about the, you know, how the community's process came about and really move this project forward in your community. Appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, first I'll note that the conversation has changed really dramatically in just the last less than 10 years when it comes to this topic. When the idea of highway removal first came about, we were talking about a section of highway that, like I said, was underutilized and had begun to deteriorate and separated very, let's say, more affluent neighborhoods from the downtown area. And so, you know, it was because it was underutilized, because it was deteriorating, and because there was a let's say a strong voice from adjacent neighborhoods saying that we want this gone, we want this connection, reconnection to take place. Although it took 25 years to go from idea to reality, it stuck around, and good ideas never die, and eventually it found its champion and it moved forward. That then left the rest of the corridor, which had higher traffic volumes, and to which our State Department of Transportation at the time said was not feasible to remove. Now, again, this conversation has changed dramatically. So what was once focused purely on, you know, level of service and VC ratios, and you know, then quickly after we completed the first project, became more about why not this rest of the highway? Why can't we reconnect neighborhoods to the north with the downtown area? Why should people expect to be able to travel at 55 miles an hour through the heart of our city? And so it really became an equity issue at that point. And the funding to begin to reconsider that process was secured by the state assembly member from that neighborhood who lived literally with that highway in his backyard, and said that he demanded it as an equity concern. And so, you know, the whole conversation changed at that point and became about how do we heal these wounds while also bringing that same result to these areas, to reconnect, to create opportunities for new housing and new job opportunities, new open space opportunities in a park poor neighborhood, better connections to downtown employers, to recreational opportunities on our riverfront, et cetera. So again, what was a conversation about traffic then became a conversation about people. And once you start talking about people, and once the, let's say, political house is in order, it becomes more about how are you going to do this, not are you going to do this. I hope that answers the question in some way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, you know, just kind of hearing the experience and what really brought this to light. I didn't get that. Could you try again? Thank you, Siri.
We're still confused.
She is, and she's wise as well. So I appreciate, Mr. Dang's, comment about, working with the regions, because I, like my colleague here, Commissioner Martinez, I'm concerned, not concerned, but I just want to be mindful about displacement, because on one hand, we do want to correct the social inequities of the past, but at the same time, and we want folks to benefit from these initiatives, but we don't want to displace them. And I know that there's communities that are very, very sensitive to gentrification, and so it's going to be a responsibility, partnership. Not everything goes to the state, it's going to be partnership, and our responsibility as communities and the regions to really be mindful of that as, as we move forward with, with this highway to boulevards project. So I just want to get my thoughts down in public, and I appreciate you giving me some time, Chair.
Thank you. And I think we have Commissioner Grisby. You'd like to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Question is for Tony. Hi, Tony. We know that in America, two of the main reasons people can gain wealth is through home ownership and owning a small business and having it be successful. When Boston and San Francisco removed freeways, they created billions of dollars of economic activity, which could lead to displacement. So my question is there a way to stack state programs or encourage communities to apply to state programs that can help with workforce development, starting small businesses, home ownership? Are there ways to target that for these communities that will be getting these funds?
Yeah, again, I think these are details that have to be hammered out through the public guidelines development process. I think my first kind of thought to try to get ahead of this through a guidelines approach would be to explore the support of the development of community land trusts with any surplus land that might be generated through these types of projects as a form of really supporting home ownership and maintaining that land within the community's hands. So that's just one initial thought that I had, Commissioner Grisby, that we can definitely explore in the guidelines development process.
And Commissioner Norton, I believe you have a question online?
I do. I want to make sure I unmute my computer. I wanted to follow on to Commissioner Grisby's comment, and that was about the layering of state programs and looking at whether you can have something like a community redevelopment impact area or a EIFD, because these projects are naturally going to be putting property on a tax roll that wasn't on before. And how can we have a shared prosperity strategy with property tax to ensure that we can help reinvest in home ownership, small businesses, affordable housing, and the other types of infrastructure that are really necessary, mobility hubs, for example, that are really necessary to like knit together communities of need, and ensure that we can have potentially with our California program, maybe even a fast track for an EIFD or a CRIA, so that the programs could meet together and develop that as a way of leveraging federal dollars for the Highways to Boulevards program as well.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Norton. And to reiterate what my colleagues have said, as we look at doing any of these kinds of projects where we're looking at small businesses and how we can help them, I would just also suggest there's a lot of community-based organizations in all of these communities that certainly help with looking at how we support our small businesses and our people in those communities. So I think we've always said it's about partnerships. How do we work together to get to the same goals? So I would encourage you also to reach out to some of those community-based organizations and the community in general. And I think, Bridget, you had some closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Eager.
I just wanted to mention that the meeting material that we prepared for this item is posted online and contains more information on this topic, as well as the state's proposed pilot program. That meeting material also includes information that we gathered through the State Transportation Improvement Program process that I believe Commissioner Liu mentioned, where we asked our regional transportation planning agencies if they might be able to identify at this early stage any potential projects. So if anyone is curious, that information is posted on the Commission's website and through the meeting agenda.
Thank you so much. Any other questions on this item? Okay, we will move on to our right-of-way matters. Ritesh?
Thank you, Chair Eager. Tab 65 is a resolution of necessity hearing as requested by a property owner, Ray Hoffman Properties, a California general partnership, and their attorneys, Desmond, Nolan, LeVake, and Cunningham Attorneys at Law. The appearance request is due to impacts proposed from a $15.2 million shop safety project located in Lake County along State Route 20. The purpose of the project is to reduce the frequency and severity of collisions within the project limits. The Hoffman property is over 57 acres in vacant land and zoned Rural Lands Scenic Waterway. The property is located in a steep, sloping topography and currently has no permitted access directly onto State Route 20. The proposed acquisition area is 1.47 acres in fee. The California Civil Code of Procedures, Section 1245.210, identifies the California Transportation Commission as the governing board in the case of a taking by Caltrans. According to the California Civil Code of Procedures, Caltrans shall meet the statutory requirements in Section 1245.230, Parts A, B, and C. The requirements under Part C are the nature for the hearing before us today. Those requirements are: 1, the public interest and necessity require the proposed project. 2, the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. 3, the property described in the resolution is necessary for the proposed project. And 4, that the offer required by Section 7267.2 of the Government Code has been made to the owner or owners of record. Code of Civil Procedures, Section 1245.240, specifies 8 affirmative votes needed for commission approval of a resolution of necessity. Rizwan Tanvir, Caltrans' Assistant Chief Engineer, will provide a presentation to convey how Caltrans has met these statutory requirements. At the conclusion of the presentation, Chair Eager, I would recommend allowing some time for any last statements from both sides, and to follow that with questions from commissioners and staff. And now Rizwan is here for his presentation.
Ritesh, typically we ask if the property owner's here first and they get to speak first, because if they're not here, we may not need to go into Rizwan's presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. If we can ask if the property owners are online.
We don't see a Hoffman. Do we have another name it could be under? Or if the speaker could raise their hand on the webinar?
I believe they had a representative.
We see a Kristen Renfro.
Yes, Kristen Renfro was the representative for the property owner.
Thank you.
Kristen, you are now unmuted for you to comment.
Good morning. This is Kristen Renfro appearing on behalf of the property owner, Ray Hoffman Properties. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So are you asking that I make remarks first? Happy to do that if that's the request.
Yes, please, if you can make your remarks first.
Sure. All right. Well, we're here today because there is a project proposed which the property owner, as a preliminary matter, does not think is necessary. Alternatives have not been studied for the project. The interests of the local community, property owners, business owners, residents, has not been prioritized in terms of determining how to address the safety issue that is the objective of the project. Looking back there was a negative declaration done for this project rather than an EIR. Do not believe the property owner was contacted or provided specific notice during that process, so didn't have an opportunity to comment during the review, environmental review process. But looking back at that negative declaration, there was one alternative studied, the alternative selected for the project. There was short shrift given to any option other than a substantial modification of the hillside to accommodate the mode of safety improvement provided here. The property owner has raised the question of why reduction of speed limit in this area around this particular curve would not be sufficient to address safety issues that seem to be generally attributable to unsafe speeds on this turn. And the property owner has participated in meetings and tried to work diligently to express concerns about particular impacts on his property here. A substantial portion of the property, 1.5 acres approximately, is going to be affected, is going to be taken, affecting not only the aesthetics of the hillside there and potential ability to develop in the future on the parcel, but raises some uncertainties about access issues. We tried to go through that process with Caltrans to learn a little bit more. I think the property owner is always at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of the knowledge disparity about what Caltrans will or will not permit in terms of development of access, encroachment permits, and what the requirements are there. We've tried to work with Caltrans on that. We think that Caltrans has very, in a conclusive sort of manner, has brushed off the idea that this will impact access, the ability to develop access for this parcel in the future. But a substantial portion of the frontage onto Highway 20, the only direct access to the public roadway system for the parcel, is impacted by this taking. The property owner did submit a letter outlining objections, the bases for objections to the resolution of necessity. And so we would just reiterate that our concerns are that this project is not genuinely necessary to meet the objectives of improving safety in this stretch of roadway, that there are alternatives that haven't been adequately vetted, that the property owners, the portion of their property sought to be taken, is not necessary to achieve those objectives, and that there hasn't been an adequate assessment of the damages and that ultimately the public interest and private injury that would occur, the balance is not struck there, that you will not have the least amount of private injury for the greatest amount of public good, as is the requirement to adopt a resolution of necessity. We'd be happy to field questions or provide additional information as the commissioners may desire, but those are generally the bases for objection.
Thank you, Christine. We'll move on to Caltrans.
Good morning, Honorable Commissioners. I'm Rizwan Tanvir, Caltrans Assistant Chief Engineer, and I'm here to present the department's request to approve the resolution of necessity for a safety project on State Route 20 in Lake County, Caltrans District 1. The parcel is owned by Ray Hoffman Properties, which is represented by Desmond, Nolan, Levitt, and Cunningham Law Firm, attorney Kristen Renfro. Out of the 7 parcels needed for this project, this is the only one remaining. Next slide, please. The project is located on State Route 20, that is a rural, curvilinear, 2-lane conventional highway through rolling terrain. The section of Route 20 through project limits serves the local Lake County traffic, regional traffic, and interregional freight and seasonal tourism traffic between Route 101 and I-5. Next slide, please. The Hoffman parcel here is shown in green. It is unimproved and zoned as rural lands scenic waterway. The total parcel size is 57.66 acres. However, the project requires 1.47 acres, which is 2.5% of the total parcel size. The project location by the parcel is noted in orange here. Next slide, please. This is a street view looking west. On the left side, there are two lakeside residences, and on the right is the Hoffman's parcel. Next slide. The purpose of this project is to reduce the frequency and severity of collisions. Over a 5-year period, Highway 20 experienced total collision rate nearly twice the statewide average, and total collision rate nearly 3 times the statewide average for a similar facility. Next slide, please. The project includes improving roadway alignment by straightening the curve, providing 8 feet wide shoulders, improving clear recovery zone that is a recoverable area for an errant vehicle. All these improvements are countermeasures to reduce collisions for the Caltrans Highway Safety Improvement Program guidelines. The project also includes slope stabilization to mitigate rock fall. These improvements will increase visibility, that is drivers' ability to see objects at a greater distance, and safety for stopped vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Next slide, please. Before presenting the details of this project, I declare that 4 findings needed for the Commission to approve the resolution have been met. In the following slides, I will describe the facts related to these findings. Next slide, please. Related to the first finding, yes, the public interest and necessity require the proposed project. The existing facility has non-standard features that include a curve radius of 400 feet, which reduces the driver's visibility, and shoulder width of 2 feet to 3 feet, and no clear recovery zone, which reduces the space for stopped vehicles and recoverable area for an errant vehicle. The project will improve the existing non-standard features to reduce the frequency and severity of collisions. Next slide, please. Related to the second finding, yes, the project is planned or located in a manner that is most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The project includes increasing curve radius from 400 feet to 641 feet to improve the driver's visibility. It adds 8 feet shoulders to stop safely and for bicyclists and pedestrians. Also providing a clear recovery zone to allow a driver to regain control of an errant vehicle, and adding cable net drapery for rock fall protection. To construct these improvements, the project requires 40 feet to 120 feet wedge of property from the Hoffman's parcel. Next slide. The department has made efforts to minimize the project impacts that include using 641 feet curve radius in lieu of 1,000 feet standard curve radius. The project avoids additional right-of-way from the Hoffman property. Also, avoiding lakeside residences, avoiding construction in the lake, and including architectural treatment to the wall. Next slide, please. This picture is an example of tiered soil nail wall with an architectural treatment designed to match the local rock formations. For this project, the architectural treatment will be similar. Next slide, please. The Highway 20 is wedged between the lake and the Hoffman's parcel. So there are only two options for curve improvement and shoulder widening. Option 1, excavation into the Hoffman's parcel. Option 2, shift the roadway alignment into the lake. Option 2 is not selected due to environmental impacts and constructability. Therefore, 1.47 acres of Hoffman's parcel is necessary for the project, which is 2.5% of the total parcel size. Next slide. Here I'm showing the approximate existing right-of-way superimposed in 3D along the section of the hill that is continually eroding. Next slide. This slide shows proposed right-of-way superimposed onto the aerial from the previous slide. The proposed right-of-way is necessary for the project to complete the proposed safety improvements. Next slide. Related to the fourth finding, yes, an offer of just compensation has been made on September 10, 2021 in accordance with Government Code 7267.2. The offer meets all legal requirements, department's policies and procedures, and industry standards and practices. Thus, the department has met 4 findings needed for the commission to approve the resolution. In the following slides, I will discuss the property owner's contentions. Next slide. Before going into contentions, I want to mention that the department has contacted the property owner or his attorney 77 times to date. Of those, about 10 were without their response. Here are the most pertinent property owner's contentions and the department's response. The property owner contends the project is not necessary. Next slide. The department response, this is a safety project. According to Federal Highway Administration, widening shoulders reduces all types and severity of collisions. This compels the department to complete the safety improvements that will make the road safer for bicyclists, pedestrians, stopped, disabled, and service vehicles, and CHP enforcement. The improvements for bicyclists and pedestrians align with the department's goals for active transportation, complete streets, and multimodal network. Next slide. The property owner contend that the project is not planned or located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. Next slide.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but we have a commissioner that would like to make a motion before we go on.
You've been most helpful, and my sense is you're recapping very essential information that you've covered earlier. If I'm wrong, please continue. If I'm right, I'm ready to make a motion that we move forward.
Commissioner, you're absolutely right. So that's a bit repetitive because the property owner contentions are very much aligned with the 4 findings.
Yes.
Grisby seconds.
Any other questions? Do we have anyone calling in? Public comment?
No, nothing additional, no.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we are going to continue, and we will take a break after we discuss the shop guidelines. So if everyone can hang in there for a little while longer, we will turn this back over to John.
Yes. Check, check. Okay, item 66 is a hearing to receive public comment on the shop guidelines. In preparation for this hearing and the proposed adoption of the final guidelines, we have been working with Caltrans over a number of months, and a workshop was held to collect public feedback on January 21st. And then the draft guidelines were presented to the commission at the January 26th and 27th commission meeting. Since then, we've been working on the guidelines to incorporate the public feedback that we received and the commissioner feedback that we received. And in addition, we recently received 2 letters, one on March 8th and one on March 10th, signed by multiple organizations. They were requesting further revisions to the guidelines. These letters were posted on the commission's website last Friday under tab 69, which this is tab 66. 69 is the shop adoption, and they're kind of related to both, but I just wanted you to know that that's where those letters were posted. Staff's been working closely with Caltrans on how those requested changes could be incorporated. But because of the timing of when we received those letters, we were not able to put them into the version of the guidelines that's proposed for adoption at this meeting. So I just want to be clear to put in context some of the comments that we're going to receive. The guidelines that are proposed at this meeting don't have their comments incorporated. We didn't feel that, we felt that they did have merit, some of their comments, but we didn't feel that we could incorporate them immediately without good collaboration with all of our partners. And so at this time, I'd recommend that we now start the hearing, and I believe we have some commenters.
Thank you so much, John. Yes, do we have any commissioners that would like to speak at this time? Then I will acknowledge Sandy, I think it's Naranjo.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, and staff. My name is Sandy Naranjo, and I'm the Policy Advocate for Climate Plan. Climate Plan is an advocacy group that manages a network of organizations dedicated to create a healthier, sustainable California where people of all backgrounds and incomes have an opportunity to thrive. I'm here to speak on a couple of key elements featured in the letter we submitted back on March 8th that calls for the integration of CAPDI and Caltrans equity statement within the updated guidelines for SHOP. First and foremost, we want to thank the chair, the commissioners, and staff with engaging with our network and for allowing more time needed to fully address the subjects we raised for consideration before adopting the updated guidelines for SHOP. As we've seen wildfires ravaging through our state and an increase of adverse health impacts related to transportation pollution, we know that we have to address the climate crisis with solutions that are meaningful and specific. With the adoption of CAPDI, we are provided an opportunity to hone in on how we can move forward on a transportation system that will be both beneficial to all Californians and to our planet. But we can't get there if we are not integrating those solutions. For example, there is language that states, in quote, Caltrans should take climate action plan for transportation infrastructure CAPDI strategies as well as the Caltrans equity statement into consideration. We suggest that the language switch from consideration to incorporate, as it should state, Caltrans shall incorporate CAPDI strategies and Caltrans equity statement into the development and implementation of the Transportation Asset Management Plan and the State Highway System Management Plan. Statements like this help integrate and align what we stated, what we wanted to achieve, just like on section 4.3 of CAPDI, where it calls out for an update to the 2023 SHSMP to meaningfully advance CAPDI investment framework. In addition to strengthening CAPDI, updated reporting to the general public is also critical. When Caltrans provides an annual report on targets and performance measures to the Commission, we believe it should include a section outlining progress towards implementing strategies in the CAPDI framework and the Caltrans equity statement. We understand such measures may need to be developed and is not a statutory requirement, but we think it is vital. And it promotes good faith to the general public on how we are working towards combating climate change and how diligent we are in meeting those goals. Updated language and updated benchmarking reports is actually personal to me. because when I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with severe asthma in the emergency room due to the exposure of pollution emitted from the freeway located in my backyard. This near-death experience changed my life forever, as I didn't have the normal childhood life because I had continuous doctor visits, hospital stays, and daily treatments for my nebulizer. And I thank the union for providing my family health care to cover those expenses. Obviously, I wasn't the only child suffering from asthma, as there are many other kids in my neighborhood struggling with asthma due to the constant long-term exposure. Over 30 years after my diagnosis, we still see children in my neighborhood and neighborhoods similar like mine throughout California being rushed to the emergency room diagnosed with severe asthma. This is why updated language and updated public benchmarking is key, because it signifies a direction on how we can address the converging crisis of health and climate, and have the general public aware and updated how we are advancing critical climate strategies. Again, I want to thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and staff for working with us, and I'm looking forward to following up with all of you to get the work done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your personal story. I know we hear those in the state of California and I'm from the Valley, so certainly I hear those over and over again. And we really appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
And I believe we have some public comment. Yes, okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair Eager. We do have a few attendees with their hand raised at this time. Up first, we have Carolina Jargui.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. My name is Caro. I didn't know you had my real name on there, but my name is Caro, and I'm the co-executive director of California Walks. As mentioned by the previous speaker, a few of us advocates did submit a letter, and so I'm just going to reiterate some of those points again that are both in that letter and that have already been shared by the previous speaker. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight for you today in regards to the SHOP guidelines and the SHOP process is want to encourage you to ensure that the SHOP guidelines incorporate the CAPDI strategies and the Caltrans equity statement. We also request that SHOP information shared to the public should be improved. And one example of this is, for example, the project descriptions should be more descriptive and more precise. And finally, we like to request that in the future, when the SHOP draft is released to the regional transportation planning agencies, that they also be released to the public. Thank you, and that's it.
Thank you. We have another?
Yes. Up next, we have Kami Pierre.
Hello, my name is Cami Pierre with NextGen California, a justice and equity-centered statewide advocacy organization. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on the SHOP guidelines. I'd like to first provide my support for the previous commenters who raised our advocacy group's recent recommendation letter. NextGen stands in strong support of comprehensive incorporation of the CAPDI framework in the SHOP guidelines. I'd like to discuss the importance of transparency and accessibility, like Cara was just mentioning. We greatly appreciate the work Caltrans has done to make the SHOP more transparent, especially development of the 10-year SHOP project book. For even greater ease of reference for the public, we'd like the 4-year SHOP document to be published in a more accessible format, such as CSV or Excel-based, just making it easier for stakeholders to get involved in review. We'd also like to see the descriptions using more specific and objective language and avoid ambiguous value-based terms such as improve or upgrade. Specificity is key to ensure that stakeholders and agency staff are on the same page regarding implementation. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. Along with these recommendations related to transparency, our recommendations shared with other transportation advocates are critical to achieving California's climate and equity goals. As we know, the transportation sector is the largest greenhouse gas emitter, and this conversation today is absolutely critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Bryn Lindblad.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Deputy Director of Climate Resolve based in Los Angeles. I want to start with just kind of a call to action, right? The changes needed in what our transportation spending looks like. We got that call to action through CAPTI. And now we have the challenge, right, as a state of trying to make that change happen. So we've got catastrophic climate change underway. We also have a public health emergency in the here and now, right? Collisions have been on the rise, and we need street design to help address that tragedy. I'll share a little bit my personal story too. I was also diagnosed with childhood asthma, as too many people are. Had some years of not having to use an inhaler, but unfortunately am back to needing to use it again post COVID infection earlier this year. And I'll share my biggest kind of fear and dread is the day when I won't be able to bike around anymore, which is how I like to get from place A to B because of our dirty air deteriorating my respiratory health. All right, then I will give a little bit of appreciation of some progress we've seen from C2C and Caltrans staff recently. So I want to express some gratitude that at the last SHOP hearing, there was a really clear presentation by Mike Johnson showing the project workbook. And so appreciate the transparency and clarity that presentation helped provide. Also appreciate that the work has been done to integrate complete streets and climate adaptation into the planning process for SHOP. And lastly, I would like to suggest some areas of continued improvement and echo some of what the previous commenters have already voiced. So firstly, if would like to see moving towards including the complete streets decision documents to understand not just like whether or not complete streets elements were included, but also why, what kind of decision-making evaluation led to whether complete streets were included or not. And if possible, also include transportation planning scoping information sheets, make those available for us as the public to see. If you could please move towards trying to release the SHOP documents in a CSV or Excel-based like tabular format. That would, again, just kind of help with being able to review what all is in that SHOP project workbook. And lastly, for descriptions of projects, really want to move away from value-based terms like improve or upgrade and get a little bit more tangible, concrete descriptions of what does that mean? Is that does that mean widening a bridge? Does that mean adding in safety elements? And if so, what? So trying to get a little bit more objective and specific language, please, in those project descriptions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those suggestions of making it user-friendly. Do we have others?
Yes. Up next, we have Topher Mathers. Topher, you're free to unmute yourself and comment.
Sorry about that. I didn't see that button. Hello, Chair and CTC members. My name is Topher Mathers, and I'm the Organizing and Policy Specialist with Active SGV. Active SGV's mission is for a more sustainable, equitable, and liberal San Gabriel Valley. We were also part of the Coalition of Advocates that sent in the letter earlier, and I just want to reiterate and highlight what was in the letter and support some of the other previous speakers. First, I'd like to speak on behalf of myself and share my experience of traffic violence. I've been hit multiple times while riding my bike in the city that I live in while I was going to work and meeting friends. I have scars on my bodies from those incidents, and I want to speak as to why complete streets are important and how SHOP can better elevate the information that's available in it so that people can understand what's being proposed. So our recommendation is the SHOP preparation. We like to see complete streets decision documents, the CDC, for each project included in the project description. This is the best way for us to understand as advocates to see what kind of complete streets elements are included or not included, but the decision-making process the decision-making process that led to it. This already should be available since ESDD is already required in the 2020 SHOP PID. This just makes the information more available to individuals and advocates to understand what is included in the scope of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Chair Yeager, I see no other virtual attendees indicating they wish to comment at this time.
Great. Do we have any of our commissioners that would wish to comment? Yes, Commissioner Grisby.
Just wanted to commend the advocates for clarity and providing pragmatic, actionable solutions and suggestions. Thanks.
So John, at this time, are you asking us to defer?
So that's the next item.
Okay.
So that, are you closing do you want to close the hearing?
Yes, I'm closing the hearing. Yes,
Excellent.
thank you.
Okay, so the next item is 67, and I will just say that we had some good meetings we've known about these changes for a couple weeks now, and even though we just got the letters recently, but still working on how they can be incorporated. So I think it would be good if if the commission would like to defer adoption of the final guidelines, that will not, we can still adopt the SHOP a couple items later. So that would be my recommendation, is that we defer adoption of the final guidelines to the May commission meeting.
May or April? Are we doing?
I think May.
We're doing May? Okay.
I'll move that we defer till May.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. It's deferred to the May meeting.
Madam
And
Chair,
we'll continue to work.
Who made the motion? A second, please.
Commissioner Liu,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, John, you're up.
All right, yep, 68. So 68 is an action item to approve amendments to the 2020 SHOP. These are amendments that we need to take care of prior to adopting the 2022 SHOP. There is one change on the change list to one project in the attachments on this. Details can be found on the change list. With that change, these SHOP amendments will revise 3 projects that are currently programmed in the 2020 SHOP, and it'll add a total of 23 new projects. All 23 of these new projects that are being added into the 2020 SHOP are major damage projects using the major damage reservation. So staff has reviewed these amendments and recommends approval.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Yeager. We do have one attendee looking to comment on this item. We have Jeffrey Purdy. Jeffrey, you're free to comment. Jeffrey? You're free to unmute yourself and comment on this item.
I have no comment.
Okay, thank you. No other comment at this time.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Do I have a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right, I can go to 69.
I suggest we take a little break now, check out, is at noon, so people like myself who have not done that can check out, and, take a bio break, and then we'll go back and get 69, 70, and then move expeditiously through the remainder of the agenda.
So are we taking 15 minutes?
Yes.
Can do it in 15 minutes. Okay, we will be back at 11:35. Thank you.